Alright, next up we are going to start on the body for the PRS kit project. The holes for the control knobs are a little bit small. We're going to go ahead and drill those out a little bigger. And then the circle cutouts weren't all that circular. They were a little bit flat. So I needed to get a couple different tools and try and widen these out. So I had a wide router bit, and that didn't do it. And then I found this sander, ball sander, that worked perfectly. This is 220 grit, maybe I think it's 180 grit. And I could take that sander, put it in the hole, get my vacuum cleaner on it, and then it really rounded out the maple so that it was more circular than flat. And so a lot of work went into getting these circles right. It probably was the worst part of the body, was getting these right. There were a couple edges and it wasn't nice and round. So this ball sander worked out really well. Kind of ruined it in the process. If I had known, I probably would have bought a couple different grits and used it that way. But here, this worked out pretty well. So you can feel it. Get a, I think this is 220 grit now, and just starting to smooth this out a little bit. Probably spent about 20 minutes in total getting this right. So just get that feel, make sure the ledge is gone. And even once I did the sanding with the 220, I could feel the ledge was still there in one spot. So I'd come back with that Stumac scraper and continue to scrape and get that ledge out. So whenever their router bit went in and carved this out, it just sort of caught an edge or something, and you could just see a little bit of a bump. And as I finished it, I could still see that ledge, which drives me nuts. But that's one of the things when you use a pearl or sparkle, the paint is so thin, you gotta be careful and make sure you got all the lines out and everything's perfectly flat and smooth. That's why you'll use grain filler to get everything smooth, which is what I'm doing here. I've got some grain filler, some wood filler, wetted it down, wiped it on the body, made sure everything gets really smooth. Like I said, if it's not smooth, you'll see the lines in the wood. So we'll do the horns and the back. Get it nice and smooth. This is just a sort of natural color. Doesn't really matter since it's being painted. It's going to be primed and painted. But I want to get any sort of dings or zings, any open pores out. This won't look good if it's got some open pores. We'll continue to rub this in. I go over this twice, make sure I wipe in a couple different directions. That way any open pores or little dings and zings disappear. And then before we actually sand this out, we're going to go ahead and finish laying this guitar out. I've got my Craftsman laser level, and it really helps laying guitars out, get that straight line carried through the body. Make sure this is exactly laid out perfectly. We're doing 25-inch scale. We'll make sure that this sits right. So we'll go back and forth, lay it out a couple times, make sure it looks good, center it, draw a couple lines, recenter it. And the age-old measure twice, cut once. Same thing here. Measure multiple times before you drill. We'll figure out what hole size these are. And this is 12mm holes, which I don't have. So we had to order a couple of 12mm drill bits. We have to widen the holes a little bit too small for my pickup wiring. And then for setting up the bridge, we'll go live in video here. So I'm using this Resomax harmonic wrap bridge from Graphtec, and these bridge posts are pretty tight. They've got a cool magnet in here that holds them, but they don't have much play in here. I'd say that's less than a 64th. So once you set this, it doesn't really move, and I tried and tried and tried to build the jig, and finally on, I don't know, the 10th time I've got it right. But always drill for a jig with this. That way, if you imagine trying to fill and drill, what a pain in the ass. So do a jig when you're setting the bridge. I've learned it makes a huge difference, and that way if I use this again, I've got it just right on it, throw it in a box. So I'll line this up use some double stick tape, tape it down, and take it over the drill press. Once we take it to the drill press, we've got the double stick tape. We'll hold this down. No, I'm not flicking you guys off. We'll go slow. I set the drill press so that it just goes to the right depth. That vacuum attachment is significantly helpful. Didn't realize how much of a help that would be as I got into doing this a little bit more. So we're all drilled. We'll go ahead and drill the wire for the ground out the bridge and the strings. Make sure that goes through. A little bit of pain doing it this way. And those longer bits break, so gotta make sure it goes through right. And then we get to sanding. And I've got a contour sanding pad, my Craftsman sander. And we'll start out with some 320 grit. I've got my dust mask on and my fan blowing all that dust outside. You want a perfectly flat surface, so I'll do 320 all the way up to 600, get it nice and clean. And then once I spend about another half hour sanding this out, I came back with some vinyl sanding sealer, pre-catalyzed sanding sealer. Got my GoPro on, and we'll spray the top and the back and the sides. We'll do about 3 coats on it. Just make sure I get it all sealed out. Lay it out one more time, and then we'll go ahead and set the neck. So I got my Craftsman laser level again. There's just a slight bit of play in the neck. It's not as tight. That was one of the things I was a little bit worried about. So one of the tricks I was playing with is how do we get this tighter? And there's a couple ways to do this. You can put a shim in there and shim it, which I don't really like doing. So I have this wood swell for chairs. And I'm going to take this wood swell and lay it on the inside of the neck pocket, and I'll put it on the neck. And this is the trick I thought would work when I was telling you guys about it earlier. Is sometimes Gibson uses a really liquidy, runny glue to get their neck pocket to swell. And I'd had a little bit too much room for that here. I don't know the exact distance that I had, but it wasn't as snug as I wanted it to be. So we'll use the wood swell it up a little bit, helped just a bit, but there was still just a tad bit of movement. So I'll come back with some tight bond. I use 2 screws to help set the neck, and then I'll grab my clamp and clamp this down here, and that's all you really need to do to set the neck. So now that the neck is set, I still got just a slight gap on that top side right there, and I got a little bit of a wedge. We're just going to glue this in and chisel it out. I don't want to see a gap, and if you use filler at a neck spot, if the neck moves at all, it'll crack, and then you'll get sort of a really ugly mess. So I've got a piece of veneer, and even that piece of veneer was too thick. What I do is I sand it down slightly, and then I pound it in, and just use a little bit of glue and run that glue in there. And that way it doesn't move. The changes in humidity won't show that gap, and it's nice and fixed. So here I got my chisel, just clean it out. We're getting pretty close to done with the body and getting ready to finish it. So I thought the glue swell would help significantly. It didn't. So we came back with a little piece of veneer, glued it in. What I've seen guys do is glue the veneer and then re-glue the neck. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want it didn't need that much. It just needed just a slight bit so where I was going to finish it. So we'll get that chisel and we'll chisel down on the top and on the side just to get it to fit right. And really it's like probably 5 or 6 pieces of paper, if that even. Once we get it in, pound it in, a little bit of glue, clean it up with the chisel, and you're done. So we are all set, ready to prime this sucker and get ready for finish with this white pearl paint I'll show you. So that's the body. We're all set, getting ready to finish this off. Thanks for watching, guys. We will see you in the next video when I start applying a finish.